You're listening to Inside Content, the TV industry podcast. This show is brought to you by 3Vision, a global TV industry consultancy specialising in content acquisition, strategy, research and business development. Each episode, we give you VIP access to the views and experiences of senior TV executives and discuss the latest TV industry trends and insights.
Hi there, I'm Jack Davison, EVP at 3Vision, and welcome back to Inside Content. This is our first episode of the new year, and we've got lots of insightful guests from across the TV and streaming landscape lined up in 2023. But to kick things off this year, I'm joined by Shaun Keeble, VP of Digital at Banijay Rights. We discuss in this episode the evolution of content in the FAST and AVOD space, including the success of their own channel, Horizon, the distribution of FAST channels, the licensing of content to third-party channels, and the mixed economy for distributors in the FAST space. Welcome to Inside Content. I'm Jack Davison, EVP of 3Vision, and I get to take a little time out today talking about things that matter, are important in our industry. And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Shaun Keeble, VP of Digital at Banijay Rights. Hi, Shaun.
Hi, Jack.
It's always great. I always love doing Inside Content because we don't often pause and take that time to listen and talk about things. At this point in time, we're all thinking about what's happened in 2022. And I think there's lots of things to discuss, lots of things that went on. SVOD stumbled at the start of the year, I think it's fair to say, starting with Netflix, but perhaps even more significantly, a host of factors hit media and tech stocks globally. Investors shone a new light on studios and streamers, I guess demanding a focus on profitability instead of just a relentless, no-holds-barred chase for subscribers. And the SVODs have been working really hard this year, pivoting into adding advertising to services, looking at dealing with things like password sharing and their content pipelines. And then studios and the studio services, I guess, replanning their rollouts and how best to monetize their content. But all this was going on whilst not quite out of nowhere, but the AVOD model was gaining significant traction. Financially speaking, a lot of that was clearly in real money terms driven by US revenue growth, but globally getting huge attention, huge lot of activity, kind of usage growing, and undoubtedly I think it is undoubtedly that it was sort of top of the hype curve in 2022. And so it is great to be here at this stage of the year to talk to Shaun, because I'll let him tell us a bit more about it as well. But Shaun oversees the Banijay's digital self-publishing commercial activities, I think is probably the best way to put it. And you work with the team to kind of manage all the revenue share business models in digital, social media and FAST globally. But I will not do a bad job of telling everyone what you do. I will leave it to you. So, Shaun, maybe if you could kind of start off by just telling everyone kind of what you get up to at Banijay.
Of course. And thanks so much again, Jack, for allowing me to join the podcast today. So my name's Shaun Keeble. I'm Vice President of Digital Distribution for Banijay Rights. And as you say, Jack, I oversee all of the digital self-publishing commercial activities. So this is alongside our senior management team. And it really spans across a number of pillars, but we predominantly go down to the route of AVOD and SVOD self-publishing, social media clip monetization, our content protection business, and also, of course, our FAST channels distribution, which is going out globally.
There's actually, I know behind that, there's quite a lot really, isn't there? Because, but people don't talk a lot, funnily enough, they don't talk a lot about YouTube, even though it still is a phenomenal kind of player in the business. And kind of, it's almost like, I think they park it and accept it and it's there and they have a lot of business on it. And now we talk about the other interesting things, but FAST and AVOD, big kind of topic. Obviously Banijay right now is its constituent parts are other companies that we've known well over the last few years that you have absorbed into the business. So whether it be kind of your more recent one with Beyond or Endemol, perhaps more significantly in this topic, but Banijay as a company were, I would say, involved pretty early in the market with FAST and FAST channels. Because I know you mentioned it to me. Perhaps you could just give us a little bit of insight into the scale of your operations with FAST, kind of how many channels you have and kind of just the sort of what you're doing.
Absolutely, Jack. So, and you are right. The scale that Banijay Rights now has in the FAST channel is quite something. So, we in the market currently have 19 unique fast channels, and we've been able to syndicate these 68 times across various different streams around the globe. So the way that we've approached fast is that we've got a mixture of both single IP and aggregate-based genre channels. We could have channels dedicated to formats such as Deal or No Deal, Fear Factor, or Survivor. We've also launched aggregate channels, including here in the UK, our Horizons Powered by Banijay channel, which is our focus towards our UK entertainment back catalogue, which is, of course, a fantastic array. I mean, in terms of footprint, we have channels across the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, Brazil, France, and also Germany.
That's quite a channel on it. I'll come back to Horizons. Love to ask you about that. But I was involved in producing PAC's UK TV export report this year, as we do, and in it we asked distributors some questions quite similar to the broadcast do their distributor survey, and it was interesting that I think I've got it in front of me here, that in terms of distributors who rank kind of an area most that's sort of most important to them in terms of what's kind of growing. It was interesting that kind of AVOD has grown even more this year, up 9 percentage points in terms of the number of distributors that ranked it as the most important. And it was the total priority for 16% of them, which for AVOD is a big jump, because AVOD always was that sort of not afterthought, but it was always the last thing in a way. But it has still predominantly today been about archive and catalogue and so I say third window. It started even before that, maybe being about kind of almost unused kind of archive, I think in the early days, with sort of very little risk. But that's certainly kind of changing in terms of the attitude and the way content owners are approaching it. You're seeing those ones that kind of weren't quite ready to jump in and maybe felt their content was too good to be sort of putting in there, and that sort of attitude seems to be opening up more and more. Its success has driven some of the bigger US players to get maybe involved in a little first and second window content, and even sort of some of the players, the roast of the world, getting involved in originals. But I'd love to hear how you feel it will evolve. I mean, it kind of still kind of very much about kind of a sort of secondary, third windows, but I'd love to hear your views on kind of what you've been doing, where you see it maybe going.
Yeah, sure. So, I still stand by that back catalogue title exploitation in the fast channels still has a considerable amount of advantage. And, it's about having volume in the fast channel space. So we've always said that in theory, you need 100 hours of content to launch a fast channel and then think about refresh. So having a back catalogue is very useful in this play. So from our perspective, what we're thinking about, obviously, absolutely, if commercial models are reflecting those that are typical for a first or second window, then of course we would see more of those titles in the fast space. But as we're noting already, AVOD's play outs and typically fast channel revenue share models are those. They are rev share business models in arrears, or particularly advertising inventory splits. So I think what we're going to have to think about is should the industry start seeing progression and development in terms of first or second window runs or additional originals, then of course those commercial models may need to reflect that. However, I still stand by, from a fast channel distribution and programming perspective, you'll need volume. So leveraging back catalogue in this space, of course, is very very key.
Yeah. I want to say something, but I need to qualify it, because I know, notwithstanding the fact that I think a lot of this back catalogue is actually very good, therefore you're kind of in a way we're saying kind of you get what you pay for as well. If you're still if you're not willing to pick up some of the risk as an operator for the content and paying kind of license fees, direct full kind of license fees, then there's always going to be a kind of cap on perhaps how that content kind of windowing is going to evolve. These services need to step up a bit to get that content a bit earlier, you'd say.
And I think also, just going back to the point of, the back catalogue titles that we're really exploring in the fast channel space, again, we're leveraging very recognizable IP and formats that would have sold in first or second windows in the market. So having that market awareness already means to the point of the fast channel will hopefully cut through. We're not just uploading or scheduling content which doesn't make sense in terms of an aggregation or in terms of an IP that doesn't have the good enough amount of hours. From our perspective, we're really looking at those titles which have already got market awareness, and the idea is for Fast is to allow for a new audience potentially to watch that format if they didn't watch it potentially on their first or second run. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you mentioned something also when you were talking about kind of the scope of the operations, about how your 19 kind of channels are syndicated across 68 times. I guess kind of for me, fast channels, obviously, kind of one of the key important things, I guess, like anything in the content world, is distribution, and the distribution are kind of on platforms, which I don't think is the perfect word for the people that aggregate the fast channels, because platform creates certain connotations, and I think maybe service is probably the better word, because there are lots of different sorts of distribution partners potentially, and I guess how do you go about kind of evaluating those? Is it just about getting in front of eyeballs, or kind of how does it work?
It's a fair question to ask, Jack. So of course, Banijay continues to be platform agnostic as a company. So, we'll work with whomever makes commercial sense. From our perspective, absolutely, channel syndication is key in the fast channel space, but so is P&L. So when we're looking at the various connected TV platforms, we'll be striking deals with those global players. They can include the likes of Samsung TV Plus or LG channels, Amazon's freebie service, but we're also looking at a local level as well in terms of those players that may have obviously already footprint in those major markets too. So that could include NetGem, for example, here in the UK. In terms of platform evaluation, we're going to be looking at a number of factors. It can include footprint, i.e. how many devices are available in the market, who's watching the channels, who's watching the platform, who are these audiences, and predominantly, are these audiences going to be interested in our Banijay Rights channels? So we've got to take those into consideration alongside, of course, the commercial return. We'll have to be looking to, what are the ad sale rates? What are the expected advertising CPMs for us then to make a commercial decision?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are quite a few moving parts, aren't there? And in some respects, well, maybe you're obviously in a slightly different kind of part of the chain to us, but in some respects there is that kind of challenge with data as well, who's sharing it all and how much they're sharing and so on. But you mentioned a few of them that I'd love to kind of just focus on more in a general kind of area. I mean, the OEMs, the equipment manufacturers like Samsung and LG you mentioned, and Vizio, they are an increasingly kind of interesting piece of the equation with Fast and AVOD at the moment. What I think is absolutely kind of flabbergasting actually is one of them. I was looking at their annual report actually, and Vizio, who make TVs. I think people who know Vizio know they make TVs. They also have kind of AVOD and Fast services. They made, to date, the first 3 quarters of this year, they made a profit of $227 million. 94% of that profit was from platform revenues, was from advertising, sharing from SVOD partners, or facilitating direct advertising on connected TVs. That 6% of those revenues were from selling TVs. I just think it's quite telling when kind of, I know we've all seen Roku develop from an equipment manufacturer originally into a kind of service provider and enablement provider. Their kind of revenue numbers not quite, I think, that extreme, but they show the same story of how important their kind of revenues are from those services, and they themselves obviously are really important platform partners from the likes of yourselves, but they're also licensing content and taking, in some cases, taking some risk and creating their own what I think that the industry likes to call O&O channels, owned and operated channels, and I know Samsung's got kind of a wildlife one. They've had in some markets they run the Baywatch one. They've got sort of the Jamie Oliver one. They've got there's more. I think sort of the names escape me. And Vizio, I think all of most of their channels, Vizio somethings, and have some movie channels. I think Roku's got a couple of movie ones, and this. I am presuming, this is also an opportunity. So we've talked about fast channels, but actually licensing to those guys who are running their own fast channels is as presumably as a good opportunity for distributors. And are you? I mean, is that mixed economy something you work in terms of kind of targeting the opportunity?
Sure. So absolutely. Typically, if Banijay Rights has launched a third-party channel on a platform, then already those conversations of licensing to an owned and operated channel would also be in parallel. It's a good commercial route. It's another avenue for either titles which again may not have enough volume to be in its own fast channel, so being approached or approaching a platform to discuss their owned and operated opportunities again allows for another form of incremental revenue streams from there. But as you say already, Jack, typically those models may differ as there might be more risk coming from the platform. So absolutely, the opportunity of licensing content for O&O, it's certainly one that Banijay Rights does explore, and typically in parallel when launching a third-party fast channel on the platform.
And kind of almost as a sort of adjunct to that. I was sort of always aware, kind of a few years ago, of the sort of the proliferation of those kind of the aggregators, not exclusively, but largely in the US, obviously taking advantage of the growth and the kind of scale of that market and how quickly it grew. FilmRise is one, but there are others. And they launched a lot of channels, and they launched some general channels with just movies in and TV shows. Then they launched some single IP ones that distributors, including UK distributors, kind of licensed some content to operate. We've seen a few of those transition from kind of being FilmRise or other aggregator operated ones to perhaps being more directly run by the distributors. I think that there's still a role for these companies because they know what they're doing. They've been doing it for years, and they'll still offer channels the same way anyone does. But do you see perhaps that calming a bit more as distributors kind of develop those skills to go direct to the platforms?
I think it will all go down to, of course, infrastructures and certainly resource at desk to not only strike deals with the fast channel platforms themselves or the connected TV platforms, and we've also got the operations to go ahead and facilitate the channels, not only deliver the content to the platforms or to the facilitator, but also then to program and schedule the content, which of course are roles which are very key when launching channels. So I think it really will come down to a company's position in terms of resource at desk, and also, wanting to either invest in in-house or third-party routes to market. So I think there's certainly still, a need for aggregators potentially for those companies that don't have that resource in-house.
Yeah, I mean, I would, I assume that over the last few years, even though Banijay's constituent parts are hugely huge, big and significant, and you're a big player, you've had to learn a lot of skills and bring in new processes and operations to be able to do what you do.
You're fairly right, Jack. So absolutely, in terms of talent retention and talent growth, it's certainly a big priority for the company. And as we have launched, at scale, our fast channels operation, it has meant for hiring talents that, are going to be suited to these roles. So when we're thinking about our fast channel operation, again, we're going to need to find channel programmers or channel managers, as well as operations executives who can deliver content to a specific specification to each platform, typically via cloud. We need, of course, people to handle metadata, artwork, And again, going back to the programmers, we need people to physically schedule content and on linear feeds, which is something, of course, would be typically sitting with a broadcaster instead of a distributor. But from our standpoint, what we're doing is we are taking these channels and we are curating them in the best possible way, whether it be programming in blocks or programming to clock. We're certainly looking at all avenues of programming strategy, as well as leveraging that data, which you mentioned earlier before, Jack, in terms of how we can take that information at a granular level and then, of course, schedule accordingly. So in terms of talent opportunities, absolutely, we've had to certainly consider all of these moving parts as we continue to grow the fast channel business.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to steal that you just said when you said whether you're programming to blocks or programming to clocks. I like that as an expression because that's important in this in the fast world. That brings me back actually to something you said really early on, and I think it's a really interesting development, because I think people can be it's very easy to be a little bit flippant about fast, because there's elements about the fast proposition that you can sit there and say, what the hell? Like, we've moved into a world of kind of on demand and box sets and kind of people accessing whatever they want, whenever they want, kind of the linear TV is on the decline. Kind of why would fast be doing so well? I think it's caught a lot of people by surprise, but there is some obvious kind of strengths to it, and it is answering, I think, a very obvious consumer need, which is sort of a more less taxed, less sort of searching kind of need, and more just sit back and be entertained. But I think people can also be a little bit flippant about kind of maybe single IP channels where it's just an episode after an episode, and there is still, I think, there is a skill there and a requirement there to kind of do things. But more importantly, what I thought was really interesting was when you launched your Horizons channel, which is I had it on in the office on Friday. Actually, I was watching it, so at least I could understand it. And it is scheduled like a general entertainment channel. Sorry, it's probably a better way of putting it. You have entertainment shows, quiz shows, drama, and it's a good old TV channel. So it's not thematic, it's not a single IP, and I'm really interested in what you could. How's it going? Like how's that channel working? Is it doing okay? Like anything you can tell us about it?
Thank you, Jack. First of all, for recognizing. Absolutely, we are very proud of Horizons, and for us, it's our flagship UK channel where we've got our UK entertainment catalogue. And the good thing about that channel is that, as you rightfully mentioned, Jack, in terms of, as opposed to a single IP-led channel, we've got a lot of content to refresh. So in terms of our back catalogue opportunity, we have a number of hours that we can program and schedule into the channel accordingly. So we launched the channel in September, and we've launched across a number of platforms now here in the UK, including Samsung TV Plus. And we're very proud and we're very happy of how things are going. It's a really good opportunity for us to, as you rightly say, schedule as a traditional expected linear feed. So we will be really thinking about our programming strategies across the day. So, we may start with our quiz shows, which then potentially might lead into our more softer dramas throughout prime. But then when we're thinking about post-Watershed, we've got a lot of great content which can be played out post 9 p.m, including the likes of Would I Lie to You or 8 Out of 10 Cats, some fantastic scripted dramas, including Gunpowder. So from our perspective, what we're really leveraging here is a 24-hour linear playout. Which absolutely we are programming to the clock. It allows us, of course, to be very hands-on with our tentpole programming as well. So if we're looking at our Christmas schedules, or we're looking at our Easter schedules, typically what we'll find is that we have content that we can publish and we can program around those, which allow for incremental marketing opportunities, not only with our own social media platforms where we'll be able to cross promote, but also with the platforms themselves where we can hopefully look at some on-platform marketing opportunities. But for us, Horizons absolutely allows us to have an opportunity where we can refresh content at a much greater scale, as well as take all of that data and understand to an hour and to a minute, of course, what content is working well.
That's great. We often get asked in some of our, in the course of doing our kind of day-to-day kind of project work for clients, kind of those kind of trickier questions about AVOD and FAST, sort of which are the most successful channels and what's doing best, and the honest answer is you can't really answer that, because not everybody is giving you a kind of full view of the data, and it isn't sort of measured yet properly, and but you can pick up bits and bobs and hear from people about what's going well, and you can be a bit kind of a bit silly and say things that, well, kind of the most successful fast channel is not launched yet, which I think is true. I think kind of experimentations like this with Horizons and new kind of innovations are going to be happening on, and I think people are going to continue to tweak and really kind of try and find the best recipe. But it is going to be really interesting to watch. I think especially kind of this year coming 2023, we're going to see kind of a lot of really interesting developments. I guess to that point, kind of what's next for you? What's next for Banijay?
Of course, it's a very fair question to ask, Jack. Of course, from our perspective, we've now got 19 fast channels in the market, and we're not certainly going to slow down. We're going to continue looking at those, launching more fast channels, those that of course make sense to do so. With the depth of back catalogue, you know, it's certainly about either curating those single IP led channels, or again looking at more aggregate genre based channels. So from our perspective, next year it's really about again looking at more fast channel opportunities in terms of launching, again syndicating those existing channels, and exploring again from those commercial models, those advertising opportunities, whether it be exploring that too.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think I absolutely won't ask you to comment on it, but I think that there's a lot of fast channels are out there that are very low on the quality scale. I don't think anyone will mind me saying that. There's lots of kind of they originated from the kind of the digital world from YouTube. But I think there's a huge volume of kind of very average channels, and I would expect kind of next year a lot of those to sort of slowly kind of, they won't disappear, but they'll find a place slightly different to where the kind of the broadcast quality kind of more significant kind of fast channels exist. So I hope that will give even more of an opportunity for those ones to shine and to kind of grow as the other ones. I don't mean to be entirely dismissive of them, but find their place so that they don't crowd out kind of that market. But look, that's great, Shaun. I think we're probably to time. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to catching up sometime soon and seeing what you get up to in 2023 with your channels.
No, of course, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jack, for the opportunity again. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Inside Content, the TV industry podcast brought to you by 3Vision. With decades of TV industry experience and real-world success, we know the ins and outs of the market like nobody else. To learn more about our TV consultancy services, head to 3vision.tv.